Welcome back everybody to VDVRE Arcade. In today's video I just want to touch base on the new update for the T598 and specifically the engine roar mechanic that they added to the 3.08 firmware. Since I recently upgraded to a T598 about 4.5 months ago from a T150, I did a review here and a comparison video, so if you want more in-depth information, give that a gander. I decided I would do a follow-up with this update because it's partially one of the reasons why I chose this. And that video that I did when I upgraded to this explains that. And so what other thing to do than to see exactly how it works and see if it meets my expectations, since I'm kind of a haptic buff. And the reason why I'm really into haptics and VR and motion simulators, VR treadmills, gun stocks, golf clubs, anything that adds immersion to VR gaming is because I've been gaming since the 80s. I've been gaming since the early 80s. I was gaming through the video game crash. My brother came home with a big stack of Vectrex games because they were just super cheap. And if it wasn't for Nintendo, I don't know, Nintendo kind of saved gaming, I think. At least that's how it seemed for me at a 5 to 7 year old kid, you know. But I was gaming then and it was crazy. And I had a VR or a 3D headset for my Vectrex. And that was my first taste of anything kind of VR 3D-ish. And we're talking 1980s. And it was cool, man, when you're 5 years old. So for me, I put a different level of appreciation on this stuff because I had to long for it for decades before it really was viable and something that you could actually do. And now that I'm able to afford it and it's come down to a level where it's even affordable for the masses, in my opinion, that is me taking advantage of it. So when I have a piece of gear that takes advantage of a new haptic, I want to try it out, and I'm going to tell you guys what I think. So stick around, and I'll give you a breakdown of exactly what you can expect with this new haptic. Is it a gimmick, or is it for real? Is this a gimmick? I would say it is not, based on what I've experienced using it. And ultimately, what I would consider a gimmick, if it was a gimmick, is, say you take 3 separate games, a shooting game, a flying game, and a racing game. And no matter what car you're in, or no matter what gun you're holding, or no matter what thing you're flying in, the haptic response you get feels the same, is the same for every single thing you do. That would be a gimmick, and that would get old and tired. Now that might be cool for something in 1980s, but it's not going to work for 2026. But I'm happy to say that that's not how it works. So it's not a gimmick. The other thing I'll touch on real quick is, would this make you better per se? And I don't think directly, because it's just kind of more of an immersion thing. In my opinion, adds to the fun and immersion of it, especially if you're playing in VR. And for me, the only thing I would say is if that immersion allows you to get in the zone so you perform better, then maybe indirectly, but outside of that, I don't know. All right, let's talk about the haptics and kind of how it works and how it delivers them to you. And then once we get that, then we'll talk about the cars and what you can expect between the differentiation of how it makes each car feel. So the way the haptics are working with this is through the audio channels. They match up perfectly with my Buttkicker, and my Buttkicker runs on the audio. They're timed perfect, so these are audio haptics. Now, there are a few things about audio haptics that are positive, and one that kind of is a negative that is also a positive, if that makes sense. The first one is it allows for a little more slop between different gear manufacturers. Like my Buttkicker and a Thrustmaster steering wheel share the same sound channel and produce the same kind of haptics. Their timing's on, and they feel like they were made together as one package. They don't feel like they're disconnected anyway, and that is a bonus of audio haptics. Now, the other bonus is because audio haptics, you have a nice range generally of frequencies in games that can produce a wide range of haptics, and in different combinations can produce some pretty cool effects. And because of that, that is awesome. You know, that's one of the positives. But at the same time, you can also be limited because there is only so many frequencies. And if you have a lot of something, say like Gran Turismo with 500 cars, you're bound to drive cars that have a similar haptic feel because the engine sounds are similar, right? That doesn't mean they're going to be identical, but they are similar. So keep that in mind with how the haptics function with the engine roar. Now, aside from that, one of the other cool things that the engine roar can do because of the dynamic ability of being audio to haptics is it can translate and modulate the engine sounds on the fly based on how you're racing, for instance. So I noticed this when I was racing with it, and I can't remember which car it really stuck out to me, but it was one of them. And I noticed that, for an example, if you go from 0 to 150 miles an hour, floor it and have nothing interrupt you, you can just keep accelerating as the car is able to do it up to 150 miles an hour, you're going to get a certain power band, which is going to produce a certain sound range, which is going to then in turn produce a specific haptic attached to that. Now, the difference is if, say, you're going, same vehicle, but say you're going 60 miles an hour and you have to slow down before you can go any faster because you're hitting a turn or there's a car in your way or whatever. And then once you get around that, you can hit the gas again and accelerate to your 150 mile an hour target. That is going to produce unique haptics that are different from just going from 0 to 150, because when you step on the gas in second or third gear versus stepping on the gas from 0 to gear and just following it through the power band all the way up till you get to the 150 mile an hour mark, wherever that is in your gearing, versus stepping on it when you're in a rolling start at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, it is going to produce a different sound from your engine than just something consistent through the gears up to that speed. And because of the way audio haptics work, it gives you a distinct feeling. And that distinct feeling makes the car feel unique. And when the car feels unique, it makes it feel more immersive. And for me, I thought that was cool as hell. And that's one of the things I liked about it. It actually put a smile on my face. And that's one of the things that I think people will like about it, because it can do that. Now, let's talk about the cars and what you can expect with the differentiation between models with the engine roar haptic feedback from the T598. Now, I chose 6 cars out of the possible 500 so cars in Gran Turismo, but I tried to choose a wide variety of cars that would give me the most diverse options or sensations, hopefully, with the T598's new engine roar haptic. Now, I'm comparing it against my Buttkicker because my Buttkicker already gives me engine roar sensations among other things that it processes. So I'm trying to see it, does it work as well as that? Because if it works as well as that, it's a winner-winner. So what I did is I raced the 6 cars, and those 6 cars were the F-150, the 1988 Supra, a 1965 Mini, a Ferrari 458 Italia, a 1971 Mustang Mach 1, and then the McLaren GT3 or GTR3 race car. And each one of those cars, when I drove them, all felt unique and different. None of them felt the same. They all have their uniqueness to them, which is going to make most cars feel different because their power bands, where they redline at, when their RPMs need the car to shift, how they feel when they shift, all those things are going to make each car feel somewhat unique, right? Now, with that being said, based on what we talked about in the previous section with the audio to haptics and some of the negatives with the positives, you're going to get a little bit of overlap. Now, when I raced them all, while they all felt uniquely different, some of them felt more similar to others than other cars in the 6-car group. For instance, 3 of the cars out of the 6 cars kind of felt like they should be generally grouped together. 2 of the cars, the remaining 3, felt like they should be generally grouped together, and then the one kind of was like the only one like it, so it by itself. And the only way to really understand it and follow along is if I do like some kind of chart or a graph. So I'm just going to do like a 180-degree arc, and we'll call it our frequency arc and our haptic arc. So if I draw out an arc like this, and it's 180 degrees, and we put our high frequencies at the top, and we put our low frequencies at the bottom, and then we put our mids off to the side at the high part of the arc, and then you have all the ranges in between, right? Then we take our haptics and we superimpose it on top because they're work together in unison. And then you've got your light, fast haptics at the top with the high frequencies. You've got your low haptics with slower, powerful with the low frequencies. And then you've got your mids, and then of course everything in between. Now, out of the 6 cars that I did, the 3 that I grouped together, they ended up in the lower end of that arc, towards the low frequency section. The 2 cars that were grouped together out of the remaining 3 were in the high frequency range. And then of course, the one that was left over was kind of in by itself in the mid range off to the side. Now, the 2 cars that were at the top were the Ferrari and the Fiat. And out of those 2, I would actually put the Ferrari closer to the edge of the arc than the Fiat. The Fiat would be closer to the middle range, which we could call the mid-range. So if we were to break this arc into 3 sections, we'd have a high, mid, and low. You'd have about, out of the 180 degrees, you'd have about 60 degrees of separation within each range, right? Now, the 3 cars that were in the low range were not all equally at the same spot either, because they all felt uniquely different amongst each other, even though they are still all within the low range frequency. And the reason for that is because they're not right next to each other. There's enough space between those 3 cars to where there's enough uniqueness between them. And same with the other remaining 3 cars. And that's why we need the graph here. So now if you go back to the arc and we look at the arc and we plot where we felt those, or I feel those cars would go, I would put the Ferrari right up here at the top edge of the arc. I would put the Fiat somewhere between the mid-range and the end of the high range. I would put the McLaren directly in the middle of the mid-range. And then the other 3 cars, I would put, I think, the, I don't know, honestly, the Mustang closer to the mid-range, and then I would probably have the Supra next, and then the truck at the bottom, closer to the edge, if I was to categorize them based on what I can remember how they felt. So they're not on top of each other, right? They're all in their own little spot. Now, if you take 500 cars and you apply them and plot them all out to that same arc, well, now you have more cars than you have degrees of separation. Instead of having a bunch of degrees between each car, which lends itself to that power band, which registers its sound and then thus is turned into haptics, be more unique, now you have a lot of cars that are equal to themselves on that band. And so the cars that are closer together that you've chosen are going to feel more like each other than cars that are farther away on that arc, depending on whether you go into the high or into the low. So for example, if we were to pick the McLaren, which is dead center in the mid between high and low, and then we picked a car that was like right next to it, those cars are probably going to feel pretty close on the kind of haptics that you get. But if you take a car and you go all the way down into the low range or into the high range, you're going to have a huge difference on what it feels like. Now, unless I think you use a car, a super ton load, and get so familiar with it that it just becomes second nature, I think our brains will be able to trick us enough to where if you say you started with the McLaren and you went to another car right next to it, you would go, oh, these feel the same. But say you started with the McLaren in the dead center and you went to a high or a low, and then you went back to a car, not the McLaren, but one right next to it, maybe it's even overlapping, it might feel like a new car or a different car instead of the same as the McLaren, because you had enough of a shift between racing with the McLaren and that car when you pick the car in a high or a low end that your brain might reinterpret the new car to feel different. And because you can't drive each car at the same time, I think ultimately most cars should feel like they have some sort of uniqueness to them. Especially if Gran Turismo developer Polifani or any other developer for their game makes unique engine sounds for every single car. Because if they do, then each car would have a unique signature. Now, again, the caveat is, because all those cars are going to be mapped and overlapped, at some point when you're racing, the sound created from the power band from the engine is probably going to match the same frequency range. Thus, you're going to get a similar feeling or sensation again with cars that are closer to each other on that haptic arc, right? So with that being said, that's ultimately what you can come to expect, but it should be pretty cool one way or another, and it will add to the experience. I think it's more of an immersion adder myself, but it is cool. All right, so what I want to say in closing is ultimately I believe that this is a welcome addition to the Haptics family on the T598. And if they can keep adding more of them, so eventually we have a library of 5 or 10 of these, and you can have multiples more running simultaneously, if not all of them, so you can, or even if you can only have 4 or 5 of them at a time, and you can mix and match, that is a cool feature set to be able to kind of program haptics that you want for your own self individually, and I am all for it if that is possible. Now, I don't know what they can do or how many more they can do or what their limitations are myself, but so far so good. As someone who's only had this for 4.5 months and I've already got another haptic added feature, that is awesome, and I hope they come a lot quicker if there are going to be more, but I'll take whatever I can get, and to me it just helps solidify my reasoning for buying this. Now, if you're on a console, I would say you should probably put a little extra weight towards this due to the haptics because of the limitations that consoles have being closed ecosystems when it comes to adding haptics externally, because you really can't do that. So I would put a little bit more weight if you're on a console to this model over some of the other models, but again, whatever's your preference. If haptics is a preference for you and important to you, then definitely I would put more weight on this. If that's not as big of a deal to you for some reason, then I don't know what to tell you. Do what you do want to do so that you're happy. I'm just trying to report to you what I think would make other people in my position be happy and what this thing actually does so you can make the best informed decision. Outside of that, PC users, well, I wouldn't sleep on it because I think the axial design gives you sensations that you don't get from radial designs and gives you a feel of driving that is unique to it versus radial motors. At the end of the day, the ecosystem's so diverse that I'm not going to really preach to anybody what they should do. Seems how I mainly have been a console gamer most of my life. And all I'll say is if you're in this range of looking to upgrade, yeah, I think it's a decent PC steering wheel as well. You know, so it depends on your level of hardcoreness, but I wouldn't sleep on it, and it is a cool feature set. Even though you can add haptics being on a PC like you can on a console, it's nice because for me, again, it feels like I have two butt kickers going, which just amplifies the haptics and amplifies the experience, making it more fun and more immersive, which is what I'm all about. So with that being said, I hope this video helps you if you are looking or you're wondering about this and you come across it. If you watch to the end, I appreciate it. I know some of these videos are long and your time is important and precious. So I appreciate it if you did. Anyways, until the next time, have fun gaming.